record. Okay. And so first we're going to go to this.
Well, okay.
Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is spending time on the eternal feminine side of things. And this is the first part of this. Mary Magdalene played a very key role in the life of Yeshua, of Jesus. And so we're going to concentrate on her tonight. And next time we're going to do Pistis Sophia, which is the original feminine side that was probably written out of the Hebrew Torah. It was probably in there, but they took it out. So in that spirit, what we're going to do, hold on, we've got a video here, which is right here, and we're going to get out in the open who is Mary Magdalene and who is Pistis Sophia. So here we go.
What if the two most powerful feminine forces in early spiritual history were never meant to stand apart? What if Sophia, the ancient symbol of divine wisdom, and Mary Magdalene, the most misunderstood woman in Christian tradition, were actually two mirrors of the same hidden truth? A truth that quietly shaped early teachings, yet slipped through the cracks of time. Think about it, in every era, certain voices become echoes instead of thunder. Certain women become shadows instead of pillars. Not because their message lacked power, but because the world wasn't ready for the depth they carried. We see it even today. Brilliant women labeled too much, intuitive women dismissed as emotional, wise women pushed into silence. It's almost as if history repeats a pattern older than any institution. Now imagine that this same pattern once touched Sophia, the embodiment of sacred wisdom across ancient texts, and Mary Magdalene, a devoted disciple whose presence was far greater than the simplified image many were taught to believe. What if both of them carried a wisdom that was meant to transform human consciousness? A wisdom that flowed through mystery schools, early teachings, and symbolic writings. A wisdom that still calls out to us, asking to be remembered? In this video, you will uncover the deeper meaning behind their connection, how Sophia represents the cosmic intelligence of creation, how Magdalene represents the lived embodiment of that intelligence, and how this forgotten unity may change the way you understand spiritual balance, inner strength, and your own awakening. But a warning, each layer builds on the next. If you miss even a moment, you might lose the thread that binds the entire revelation. Stay with me, because what unfolds next will shift the way you see these two figures forever. Before we enter the forbidden thread connecting Sophia and Magdalene, we must first understand who Sophia truly is. Not the diluted symbol history reduced her to, but the original force described in the earliest mystical writings. Sophia is not a character, she is not a myth. In the Gnostic tradition, especially in sacred texts like Pistis Sophia, one of the most significant wisdom writings of late antiquity, Sophia represents the intelligence behind creation itself. She is the breath inside intuition, the spark inside consciousness, the invisible architect guiding the evolution of the human mind. When ancient teachers spoke of wisdom, they weren't talking about knowledge from books. They meant the living awareness that shapes galaxies, births ideas, and whispers truth into the human soul when logic has reached its limits. Sophia was this awareness personified, a way for early seekers to understand the deepest layer of reality. In Pistis Sophia, she is portrayed as a luminous being who descends into the realms of limitation, seeking to elevate humanity. Her journey mirrors the journey of every awakening soul. The fall into confusion, the struggle through shadow, and the rise back into clarity. But here's what many miss. Sophia was never meant to be distant or unreachable. Her story was designed to reveal something radical, that every human carries a fragment of her light, a hidden intelligence, a forgotten inner compass, a voice that speaks when the world becomes too loud. And this is precisely why her story later softened in mainstream doctrine. Because if people realized they carried this inner wisdom, if they understood that insight, intuition, and spiritual clarity were not limited to a chosen few, it would shift the balance of how spiritual authority was understood. Sophia was the blueprint of inner sovereignty, and the world wasn't ready for that. But this blueprint didn't vanish. It reappeared, embodied, lived, and protected through someone else. Someone whose name you know, but whose role you were never fully told. Mary Magdalene. To understand the forbidden link between Sophia and Magdalene, we must peel away the layers history placed over Mary Magdalene's name. For centuries, her identity was reduced to a single, limiting narrative, one that overshadowed her influence and blurred her true role. But when you step back into the earliest surviving writings, a very different figure emerges. Mary Magdalene wasn't portrayed as a passive follower. She was depicted as a spiritual initiate, a teacher, and a bearer of the deeper teachings many were not prepared to receive. In texts like the Gospel of Mary, respected by scholars of early Christian literature, Magdalene is shown engaging in profound dialogues on the nature of the soul, inner liberation, and the journey towards spiritual clarity. She wasn't merely listening, she was interpreting, teaching, and guiding. Even more striking, she is portrayed as someone who understood the teachings on a level others struggled to reach. A person entrusted with knowledge that required extraordinary depth, resilience, and emotional intelligence. But here's the part most people never hear. In symbolic traditions, Magdalene represents the awakened human, the one who has remembered their inner wisdom. She is the bridge between heaven and earth, consciousness and embodiment, knowing and becoming. She wasn't carrying dogma, she was carrying experience, the kind of understanding that comes from transforming one's own shadow, healing one's own fractures, and rising from inner destruction into spiritual clarity. And this is where her story touches the hidden thread of Sophia. Because while Sophia symbolizes the cosmic intelligence behind creation, Magdalene symbolizes the human vessel capable of receiving it. Sophia is the blueprint, Magdalene is the realization. One reveals the truth, the other embodies it. This is the part of the story that quietly shifted across time, not erased, but softened, reframed, and placed behind metaphor. And now the question becomes, what happens when cosmic wisdom meets human awakening? That answer lies in the secret connection between them. Here is the part of the story that was never meant to be obvious, yet it pulses beneath every mystical text, every symbol, every fragment of ancient teaching that survived the sharpening of history. Sophia and Magdalene were never two separate narratives. They were two expressions of the same feminine principle, mirrored across two realms. Sophia, the cosmic intelligence; Magdalene, the embodied intelligence. One is the architect of spiritual wisdom, the other is the vessel who carries it into human experience. In early esoteric communities, those dedicated to inner transformation rather than outer ritual, Sophia wasn't seen as a distant metaphysical figure. She was the inner voice that awakens clarity. She represented the hidden structure of consciousness itself. And Magdalene? She was seen as the human who had activated that very structure. This is why, in symbolic traditions, Magdalene is portrayed as the first to understand, the one who grasped the inner meaning of teachings that others heard only at the surface. Her presence in these ancient writings wasn't accidental, it was intentional. She embodied the part of Sophia that lives within every individual. The part that struggles, descends, rises, learns, breaks illusions, and reclaims truth. Think of it like this: Sophia is the lamp, Magdalene is the flame. Sophia is the map, Magdalene is the journey. Sophia is the cosmic pattern, Magdalene is the human realization of that pattern. When these two forces come together, something powerful happens. A human being awakens, not through external authority, but through inner revelation. This idea was transformative. It suggested that spiritual awakening wasn't reserved for a select few. It wasn't dependent on hierarchy, it didn't require intermediation. Awakening was internal, accessible, universal. A truth like that would inevitably reshape how spiritual authority was understood. And that leads us to the next question. If this union was so empowering, why did it slowly fade from the mainstream story? The answer lies in the cultural currents of the early centuries, and how they shaped which narratives thrived and which ones were quietly set aside. To understand why the connection between Sophia and Magdalene softened across time, we must step into the world of the first few centuries, a world nothing like today. A world where spiritual movements were growing rapidly, where texts circulated in scattered communities, and where leaders had the impossible task of creating unity out of diversity. Different groups held different writings, different interpretations, and different symbolic languages. Some focused on outer practices, some focused on inner experience. Some held mystical writings that explored consciousness and the human soul, like the stories of Sophia and the teachings attributed to Mary Magdalene. When leaders began shaping a shared tradition, they faced a challenge. How do you build a unified community when different groups hold different symbolic teachings? Naturally, emphasis shifted toward the writings that were easier to interpret publicly, teachings that could guide large communities, not just small circles of initiates. Texts rich in symbolism, introspection, and complex metaphors often became less central in this process. Their ideas didn't disappear. They simply moved to the background, preserved quietly in monastic libraries, philosophical schools, and mystical circles. Another factor was the cultural environment of the time. Many ancient societies placed greater value on public, external authority, and structured leadership. Stories that centered on inner wisdom, intuitive intelligence, or symbolic feminine archetypes didn't fit easily into that framework. As a result, themes highlighting internal awakening gradually received less emphasis. So the Sophia-Magdalene connection wasn't erased, it shifted. It lived on in Gnostic manuscripts, poetic writings, and philosophical traditions focused on personal transformation. It survived in symbols, metaphors, and whispered teachings about the inner journey of the soul. And now, as more ancient texts become accessible, a new understanding emerges. These stories weren't meant to elevate any single person. They were meant to reveal what every human being carries, the potential to awaken the same inner wisdom. Now that the dust of history has settled, the real revelation begins. Because the story of Sophia and Magdalene was never meant to remain trapped in manuscripts or distant philosophies. It was a map, a mirror, a code pointing back to you. Sophia represents the inner intelligence you felt during your most pivotal moments, that quiet clarity that rises when you're on the edge of a difficult decision, that sudden knowing that appears before logic catches up, that deep pull towards something meaningful, even when you can't explain why. Magdalene represents the awakening of that intelligence inside a human life, not as theory, but as lived transformation. Her symbolic journey shows what happens when a person stops ignoring their intuition, stops silencing their inner voice, and stops shrinking to fit expectations that never belong to them. Together, Sophia and Magdalene form a blueprint of human evolution. Wisdom descends, the soul remembers, consciousness awakens. This is why their connection feels strangely familiar, almost like déjà vu. It echoes inside anyone who has ever sensed they were meant for something deeper. An inner balancing of strength and sensitivity, reason and intuition, clarity and compassion. And notice this, modern life has made people more externally focused than ever. Endless noise, endless pressure, endless comparison. Yet the teachings encoded in the Sophia Magdalene story offer the opposite path, the return inward. A rediscovery of the voice beneath the noise. A reunion with the part of you that has never been confused, never been lost, never been broken. This awakening does not require rituals, labels, or belonging to any group. It requires one thing only, the courage to listen to yourself again. Because the moment you do, something ancient unlocks, the very intelligence these teachings were pointing to from the beginning. And once it awakens, it does not go back to sleep. When you step back from everything you've just heard, a single truth begins to rise. The story of Sophia and Magdalene was never about ancient figures alone. It was about the evolution of human consciousness. Sophia shows you the architecture of inner wisdom. Magdalene shows you how that wisdom becomes flesh, emotion, courage, and presence. One reveals the pathway, the other walks it. And now the question is no longer, why was this hidden? The question is, what will you do with the wisdom now that it has reached you? Because the moment you hear teachings like these, teachings about inner clarity, intuition, emotional intelligence, and the hidden strength inside the human soul, you are no longer the same person who pressed play. Something shifts, something stirs, something ancient remembers. Maybe you feel it now, that faint warmth in the chest, that quiet pressure behind the mind, that sense of something opening. That is the Sophia principle awakening. And the desire to live with more truth, more depth, more self-recognition, that is the Magdalene principle, rising to meet it. This union is not mythical, it is psychological, symbolic, and profoundly human. Carry this understanding with you, and your life will not unfold the same way again. If this message awakened something within you, let it not fade. Comment, I understood it. Let it be your seal, that the hidden lineage of wisdom has brushed your soul. Like this video, To keep the truth flowing, share it so another seeker may awaken, subscribe so you never miss the next revelation.
So there we are. We're going to stop the share, and we're going to pause. We're going to let's see. We're going to stop the recording.